In today's episode, want me to rush the work, okay, pay double and wait longer. All time must be accounted for. Neighbor complained to the HOA about my yard. So let's get started. Want me to rush the work, okay, pay double and wait longer. Long story. Just some background info. I own a body and paint shop in a city with lower cost of living than the surrounding cities. Because of this, my prices are more reasonable than some other shops in the surrounding areas. Also, I am very picky when it comes to my work and have the mindset that regardless of what my customers are paying, within reason, I will take extra steps to make sure the end result is up to my standards, and I always include warranty on my work. As a result of this, most of my customers are referred to me from the other more expensive cities around because they want quality work at a lower price. My prices are not cheap, but they are lower in comparison to more high-end shops in more expensive areas for the same quality work. This has usually been a win-win for me and my customers. Now for the MC. I had a guy call me and ask the usual questions, and he agreed to bring his vehicle down to my shop so I could inspect it and give him a quote. The following day he brings his vehicle down to my shop and I immediately realize that the vehicle has been previously painted. Experienced painters can usually tell. In this case, it was obviously not done correctly as the paint was already beginning to fail. He wanted to do a full restoration of the vehicle to factory condition, and I explained to him that due to the fact that the vehicle had been repainted before, there could be a chance that the time frame or price could change depending on what is underneath the paint once I start sanding, for example improper body work or prep work done by the previous painter. I also tell him that if I do find any issues that I will run them by him before continuing to make sure it still fits within his budget. We agree to the terms in a rough time frame of 3 to 4 weeks. So long as there are no surprises, he leaves a deposit, and I begin work on his truck. 3 days later I have the bed removed as well as the front end, doors and interior, leaving the truck as basically a skeleton, and I start sanding the parts. After I start sanding, and I get through the paint layers, I see that there is some previous body filler on the panels, which is normal on older cars, especially when they have been repainted, and most of the time it's no biggie when the previous repairs are done properly, meaning that the body filler should never exceed 1/8 thick. But I quickly find out that the cab of the truck had had a pretty severe impact before, which the previous body shop had not pulled out before doing body work, and the panel had a full 1.5 of body filler. I stopped what I was doing and called up the owner to let him know. After discussing it and sending him a video of the issues, we agreed to adding an extra 2 weeks to the time frame and additional repair costs, and I began the proper repairs. About 2 weeks into the original drop of date, I get a call from the owner of the truck, and he tells me that he needs the truck to be done by the following week because he has a buyer for it, and he doesn't want to wait any longer. At this point I have the truck completely torn apart, and have only finished the body work on the cab and front end and just started the repairs on the bed and doors, and that we had agreed to an additional 2 weeks on top of the original time frame, which still had not come yet, for a total of 5 to 6 weeks. I explained to him that it would not be possible for me to get all the remaining work done within a week without me having to hire more people, which would add to the cost of the job. He followed up by saying that he would not pay a penny more, and that if his truck was not done by that date, that he would be at my shop with a tow truck and law enforcement to take it, and he wouldn't pay the remaining balance. Now I knew that he would not be able to get away without paying the balance, and that law enforcement would back that up, as in my state I am allowed to place a lien on any vehicle that has a balance on labor already performed, and agreed to buy the customer, which he had. Now for the malicious compliance, at this point the customers has begun making threats and insults, so I tell them I would get the truck done on SE conditions, the warranty would be void. I would not be responsible for any previous work done to the truck that may fail, and the outstanding balance would be paid in full on the day of pickup, and that the job would be considered complete. He agreed to the terms and told me to do what I had to make sure it was done. I proceeded to finish the repairs I had started, still doing them the way I should, but for the remaining parts one simply sanded the paint a bit and proceeded to paint the truck. Sure enough, the paint showed issues immediately, but the truck was finished on time. The owner comes to pick up his truck and is livid at the results and proceeded to call the police because he did not want to pay. The police arrive, and I show them the paperwork he signed as well as all the text messages backing my explanation. The cops then tell him that unless he pays the balance, he would be forced to leave the truck and pay storage fees until it was he reluctantly paid the balance and proceeded to take the truck to another shop, which the truck sat at for an additional 4 months, and he had to pay almost double the price I was charging to have them redo some of the work. The parts one took my time on before the whole issue arose were left alone. P.S. I know the grammar sucks, but oh well, I am not going back to add all the necessary punctuation. You can still get the gist of the story without them. All time must be accounted for. Several years ago, I worked for a professional services company which handled IT projects for large companies and governments. It was a multinational with many layers of management that all tried to justify their existence. We would typically be officially assigned to 1 or 2 projects only, depending on the employee's skill set, but the reality was it would usually be more than that, and you would get various requests from people for help on one-off items. We were paid a fixed salary with no paid overtime. Our time was billed to clients according to the percentage of our time officially allocated to them. Then an email was received from HR saying that instead of logging our 8 hours per day split between the assigned projects, we needed to document every activity that took 20 minutes or more to its own P-code. A P-code was specific to a project task and needed to be created and assigned to a project. If no P-code was supplied, do not work on the request. This didn't go down well with the projects or support staff. Anytime developers were asked for help, we had to reply asking for a P-code. Sometimes the project had one available, other times the project manager would have to request one was created. Sometimes a P-code couldn't be added to a project because it wasn't budgeted for. The first issue to arise was that work wasn't being done because P-codes weren't available. Deadlines were being missed and issues were happening on production applications because easy fixes couldn't be worked on. HR insisted this wasn't their fault and the P-code process must be followed. Then developers noticed that they were spending more than 20 minutes filling in time cards and chasing projects for P-codes. As this process must be followed, we asked HR for a P-code to log our time spent tracking work and assigning to P-codes. Their first response was we didn't need one, but we pointed out the policy was that all tasks over 20 minutes must be tracked with a P-code. We were sometimes spending longer getting codes than we were on the actual work. Begrudgingly, they issued a P-code for this process. Fast forward to the end of the quarter, and the executive team is reviewing the productivity. Things don't look good. Lots of projects are delayed, support incident numbers are rising, and there is a very large amount of time assigned to a P-code which isn't chargeable to a customer. There is a swift investigation followed by an email from HR. P-codes are no longer needed. Just log your time based on your allocation to a project. Neighbor complained to the HOA about my yard. So, I have a Karen for a neighbor. She's a grumpy old C with a live-in son in his 40s and no other family or friends. And when I say she's a Karen, we're talking to the point that she came into my property to yell at our landscaper about a boulder he was installing on our property, something about believing it would fall over onto more of our property. A few months after we moved in, we receive a letter trying the HOA saying they'd received complaints and asking that we make sure we're mowing, watering, and maintaining. I chalked it up to moving into a nicer neighborhood and made an effort to mow twice a week instead of my normal once, added a little time to the sprinklers, and figured all was good. Apparently, it was not all good, as we received another letter stating the complaints had continued and the HOA wanted to talk with us to see what the problem was. I should note, we had just moved in not that long ago and hadn't landscaped the back yet, so we're letting our dogs pee on the front at night, which lead to the inevitable patches of bright green grass that grow stupid fast. Now I'll freely admit I don't keep my yard to the level of some of my neighbors, but it was in perfectly good shape outside some green spots in an otherwise average-looking yard, and I do my best to keep things mowed and looking decent. Turns our grumpy C had taken real offense to this and started complaining to the HOA. The hearing ended up bringing mostly incoherent rambling, but the bottom line was she didn't like how our lawn looked with the green spots. While the HOA agreed this was not her business and definitely not theirs, I decided she was right, and we should stop letting our dogs out in the front to pee, as I also don't like the green spots. Now, I put them on the leash and let them do their business in her yard, read, tree lawn. And I'm clearly not the only one, as her entire yard is now covered in pee spots and dead spots on her actual lawn, which my dogs don't step for on. I'm pretty sure she's complained about everyone with a dog, and now the entire neighborhood takes their dogs to her yard. The best part, she actually does a shit job taking care of her lawn, weeds and crabgrass everywhere, she just waters it almost non-stop. So today I got to report her to the HOA for her yard looking like total shit. If it were any other house, there are much worse, I wouldn't care at all, but this lady wanted lawns without spots, so I'm just doing my part to enforce her rules. Thanks for watching.